languages. And I wanted to do that by speaking those languages. So I decided on 10 of them. And I'll be doing this in a more open format than I usually do with some of my language videos. And specifically, I'll firstly be talking in the language in question, and afterwards I'll talk a bit about what I said in English, just so everybody can be a bit involved. And for anybody that wants to skip over, I'll also put some timestamps, just so you have all 10 for whichever you're interested in. But I do recommend listening to all of them, though I have to admit that with a lot of these, the criteria for favorite is, at least my criteria for favorite is quite a bit different from what a lot of other people might use for their criteria, so stick with me. But I think we should just start right now. And the first language is German. So, mit Deutsch anzufangen ist eigentlich etwas komisch, da ich ein paar Mal erwähnt habe, dass ich es nie gemocht habe, Deutsch zu lernen die ganzen 8 Jahre, zu denen ich gezwungen würde. Trotzdem ist Deutsch immer noch eine meiner Lieblingssprachen, weil es zumindest für mich so einfach zu lesen ist. Es klingt im Vergleich zu vielen anderen hart, aber für mich hat es einen Fluss, wenn ich es spreche. Zusammenfassend lässt sich sagen, dass ich trotz meiner langjährigen Abneigung dagegen immer noch gerne Deutsch spreche. Jetzt, wo es meine Entscheidung ist, es zu sprechen. So, for German, it is a weird choice for the first language that I'm going to talk about, since for 8 years I was basically forced to learn it in school, and because of that I hated it quite a bit. But it's not actually hate towards the language itself. A lot of it was due to my initial aversion to it, because I was forced to learn it and I wanted to learn something else. But in the end, I actually started to understand it. I still hated the grammar. I hated trying to make sentences and such. But I loved trying to reading it, and learning different words, and the entire pronunciation system and everything was a lot more interesting to me than the actual grammar and all of the nitty-gritty details that are, to a lot of people, well, quite important, but to me were just not it. But in its essence, it's just simple and easy to read in a lot of ways, when you get used to it at least. It sounds harsh. Even now I still think it's quite a harsh language in that sense, but it has a really good flow. So that when you actually know how to read stuff, it just goes really well one after the other, and it feels like it's a very natural language, unlike a lot of languages which often feel like they just stop and start and stop and start. So in that sense, German is still something that I really like, and I definitely enjoy it a lot more now that I'm not forced to learn it, and it's actually my choice to speak it in these videos, in this ASMR setting, rather than having to learn it outside, and especially in schools where it's just, there's no going lower than that, basically. But yeah, on to the next one. It is Japanese. Saisho ni kono risto wa tokutei no junjo de wa nai to rimashita ga, shojiki na tokoro genzai no kiniri no gengo desu. Chisai ni wa oku no ryu de sore wa kanari nagai yai arimashita. Hatsuo to yomiyasu sa kai wa kute melodiku na neiro. そして幼い頃から来ていた一般的な経験。日本語は私が個人的に求めているすべての資質を私が話したい言語でなんとか持っているだけです。もちろん私の基準は実際にそれを正しく書く方法や文法がどのように機能するかなどを学ぼうとはしていないので、平均的な人やポリグロットの両方とは大きく異なります。そのおかげでとてもユニークな方法で日本語を楽しむことができ、そのように大好きです。So with Japanese, I didn't actually mention this at the start, but I plan to, and that is that these are in no particular order. I didn't want to rank them just because I didn't want anyone to feel like I like their language less. Though in a lot of these I did talk about how much I like them, so some are quite obviously on like a higher level than some others. And Japanese, I've talked about it quite a few times, is basically my favorite language, at least for ASMR videos. And that's because of a lot of reasons actually. It's easy. It's quite easy to pronounce, to read. It's fun, it's cute sounding, it's a lot of things that I just want a language to be, like through my own criteria. And I've also had a very long exposure to it mostly through anime and the general Japanese culture. So I've just had it be integrated in my life a lot. So it just ended up being something that I really enjoyed. If I didn't like the language, I wouldn't have probably ever continued watching anime or being interested in the culture. So it's just a kind of side effect, but also a cause of why it is that I enjoy that type of content and that culture in its entirety. But yeah, as I said, a lot of it is down to my criteria of what I want in a language, especially since I don't look at how hard a language is to actually learn or to actually know the grammar of. I just look at it from a reading standpoint, a pronunciation standpoint, how nice it flows, how nice it sounds and such. It's definitely a lot different from what other people would do. Continuing on, we have Spanish. El español es otro idioma al que he estado expuesto desde muy joven y debido a su prevalencia principalmente en la televisión, naturalmente comencé a entender cómo funcionaba. Siempre me gustó la facilidad con la que cada palabra se conectaba con la siguiente y su tono profundo y expresivo. El hecho de que, a diferencia de otras lenguas romances, excepto el italiano. Su pronunciación sea simple también lo hace mucho más atractivo para mí, ya que la facilidad de acceso me ayuda enormemente. Otro factor también podría ser mi amor por España, pero nunca estoy seguro de qué fue primero, si mi amor por el idioma o la cultura. But yeah, when it comes to Spanish, it's definitely partially because of how exposed I was to Spanish from a young age. It's not on the level that English was, but there were still a lot of TV shows, a lot of not just telenovelas that my grandparents watched, or it was mostly like Spanish inside of English shows. So I was at the same time getting to know both sides. So despite not being actually trilingual, because I can't speak Spanish to a good enough level, it's still at a level where I can really enjoy it, and it has like a deep expressive tone. It's easy to pronounce, and in general I just have this love for Spanish culture, and of course language is a big part of that, so it just comes with the entire package, sort of. But yeah, on to the second Romance language, and it's Italian. Metto l'italiano subito dopo lo spagnolo perché entrambe le lingue hanno ragioni simili per il mio godimento, anche se con lievi differenze. La pronuncia italiana sembra molto più elegante e puntuale. Entrambi condividono il formato facile da leggere almeno per me, e poi c'è le lingue e romanze hanno quell'atmosfera sexy per loro. Inoltre non fa male che il mio nome sia di origine italiana, quindi mi sono sempre sentito legato all'Italia in questo senso. L'italiano riesce in qualche modo a rimare fresco ogni volta che leggo un testo o scrivo il mio, cosa abbastanza rara, soprattutto per me, con quanto lavoro con le lingue. I decided on putting Italian right after Spanish just because of how interconnected they are in my head, and like generally because they're both romance languages, and they both are similar in why I like them. I like them because they're simple, they have unique and interesting pronunciations, and they're elegant and punctual. Somewhat Italian is a bit more elegant and punctual than Spanish. Spanish is more deep and like I mean, I explained it in the last one, but yeah, Italian is definitely a bit more elegant and somewhat punctual with its like pronunciation and enunciation of certain parts of words and such. It's also easy to read, just like Spanish. It has that romance sexiness to it, like Spanish, Italian, French. They all have this innate sexiness to them. And there's also the factor of my name. As a person from Lucania, Luke or Luca, I've always had this sort of connection to Italian and Italy. That feeling that I can never really make myself detached from it just because I'm Luca. And there's also the fact that Italian, unlike a lot of languages, manages to stay fresh every time that I read it. It's always something new, it's always something interesting and something fun to try out when I try and read it. And when I do read it, it's just great in that sense, and that's why I'll always love Italian. Next up is Polish. Polski jest pierwszym z dzieciów, w których właściwie nie mówię zbyt dobrze, ale to nie przeszkadza, że jest interesujący. Nawet jako rodzimy słowiański język polski udaje mi się złamać mózg, ale nie z frustracji, a raczej z fascynacji. Z mnóstwa listów, których nigdy nie widziałem i tych, których usuwam regularnie. Naprawdę fajnie jest próbować je przeczytać i odpowiednio poruszać się po tekstach. Brzmi też zupełnie inaczej niż rosyjski czy serbski, a mimo to wydaje się słowiański. Po prostu bardzo wyjątkowy język w moich oczach. I think this text perfectly encapsulates why I'm fascinated by Polish. The most important thing with Polish is, especially when compared to the 4 other languages before it, Polish is not a language that I'm good at. It's not something that I've been exposed to. It's not something I'm knowledgeable in. So it's a lot different than all of the other languages, just because I don't have any experience with it. It's completely new to me. It's unique, and the fact that I don't speak it well makes it even more interesting. It's Slavic, and as a native Slavic speaker, you'd think I'd have more of a grasp on it, but I really don't. I do in like a pronunciation sense, but in like saying everything properly, it seems really complicated because of all the different letters that I don't usually see. There are letters that are shared, but they're still really interesting to me, and I like to experiment and try and say these words. And it breaks my brain every time that I do, but it's not frustrating. It's fascinating to me. Like, I'm not frustrated that I fail at saying a lot of these words. I'm just having fun trying to say them. And it's just fun to read because of it. And it's definitely very unique and, in my opinion, quite different to other Slavic languages. Like, I don't speak that many Slavic languages, but through ASMR I've spoken a lot of them or read a lot of them, and with how different Serbian and Russian are, as well as like Bulgarian and Ukrainian and Polish and Czech. Polish is definitely the one that stands out to me as being the weirdest but most fun because of it. But yeah, let's go on to Korean. 한국어는 아마도 내가 가장 많이 생각한 언어일 것입니다. 나는 그것을 많은 언어와 비교하고 그것을 통해 나는 그것을 많은 자질을 인식하겠습니다. 내 눈에 가장 만려적인 품질은 노래 적합하게 만드는 멜로디 특성이며 문자를 올바르게 발음하는 방법을 볼 때 얼마나 보람이 있는지도 있습니다. 한국어에 대한 나의 사랑은 내가 얼마나 많은 노출을 하고 텍스트를 읽고 언어와 문화에 대해 더 많이 많은 것을 즐기는지 때문에 항상 나와 함께할 것이라고 생각합니다. So, any of you that have been with me and following my channel for a long time probably know that I do Korean videos, I did Japanese videos, and I did German videos, and that is because those three languages are just the ones that I know best. I feel like I can do my best when I read them, and like I can do an entire video in them without feeling like it was horrible. And that is mostly because for Korean, for example, I just had a lot of experience, a lot of exposure to it, and I've actually compared a lot of languages to Korean, and because of that I recognized a lot of the qualities that Korean has, specifically how melodic it is, how easily it rolls off the tongue and continues on to the next one. Even with me, when I can't properly read the text and like do it in the melodic way, songs and generally people that speak Korean well and in a proper manner are absolutely fantastic, and that type of language really resonated with me and made me love it that much more, especially given my exposure to it with K-pop and K-dramas and everything else. But it's also very rewarding once you learn how it works, how most of the pronunciation works, how you can properly do everything with it. It becomes so much more and so satisfying when you can say it properly and do it in a proper way. And I think I'll always love it because of it, because it's so melodic, because it's always going to be connected to an entire part of my life, so it'll always stay right here. But yeah, let's continue on to the final Romance language, which is French. Yes, I included all three of the most popular Romance languages. Les troisièmes langue romane sur ma liste est la plus difficile à apprendre d'après mon expérience. Bien que ce soit aussi le ce que j'ai activement essayé de prendre le deux autres auxquels je est beaucoup exposé, moi, parler François. J'ai dû les rechercher activement et même maintenant je ne suis pas très bon pour le lit, mais cela ne veut pas dire que je ne le trouvais pas extrêmement satisfaisant et amusant à essayer. Aucune autre langue n'est aussi élégante, suave et sonore. Il est une fois très difficile de décrire que ce que l'on ressent en parlant français. Mais c'est une langue rare qui me donne vraiment envie de l'apprendre malgré sa réputation de difficulté. J'espère que je m'améliorerai au fur et à mesure que je l'utiliserai. I likely butchered that, as I usually do with French, but it still manages to be extremely fun. French is the hardest of the Romansh languages to me, and I think generally, but it's somehow the only one of them that actually made me want to learn it myself. Like with Italian and Spanish, I was exposed to it quite a lot, like a lot more than I was to French. But French always managed to fascinate me, and I even tried to learn it quite a few times. And unlike Italian and Spanish, which are quite easy to read, French is not easy to read. And yet I still have an extreme amount of fun when I try to, and when I try these sounds, the le jeu, neuf le, mon fondot, flek, mot, va, popule, all of these, it's a completely different palette when it comes to languages. No other language has this sort of pronunciation, this sort of elegance to it, and like suave, and it's just so satisfyingly fun when you pull it off, and even when you just try. I always hope that people understand when I speak French. I'm never sure if they do, but even if they don't, I think it's extremely fun, and it's an extremely rewarding language in that sense, and that people, even if I pronounce something wrong, I think people, especially the ones that don't know French, can still get a very nice experience from it. And it's just rare in that sense, and it makes me just want to learn it, and I hope that I get better at it, and that I actually learn it at some point. But yeah, continuing on, we have the last three, and this one is Serbian. So, sa srpskim, moram da kažem, pored nemačkog, srpski je verovatno bio najteži jezik da ga stavim na ovu listu. Pre svega, zato što moj odnos sa srpskim je uvijek bio čudan. Čak i ako mi je maternji jezik, očekivao bi nekako da ga volim više i da bude među mojim omiljenima, ali zbog raznih razloga, zbog raznih situacija i jednostavno stvari koje su desile, nikad nisam gledao na srpski kao jezik koji preferiram. O tome ću malo pričati više na kraju videa kada budem pričao o engleskom. Ali on je svakako delom, to moje iskustvo sa srpskim je svakako delom to izloženosti i navike, ali ipak sam odlučio da stavim srpski u ovu listu, zato što i dalje volim, uprkos svemu, da čitam i da pričam srpski i da komuniciram sa vama, i na neki način znanje srpskog je veliki razlog zbog kojeg mogu da razumem i uživam u toliko drugih jezika, jer jednostavno povezuje me i omogućava mi da komuniciram sa mnogim kolegama i komšijama sa Balkana u okolini. I da ne spominjao praktičnu korist toga da se sporazumevaš sa svima. I svakako nikad ne mogu reći da ne volim srpski. On će uvek biti moj maternji jezik, uvek ću ga znati. Ne mogu da ga zaboravim ni da pokušam. Tako da je moj odnos sa srpskim je čudan, ali uvek će biti tu kao jezik s kojim je sve počelo jednostavno. But yeah, so with Serbian it's quite a complicated story. Despite me being bilingual, I'll talk a bit more about this in the English section, which is the 10th language. But I've never actually preferred Serbian because of a plethora of reasons, and you'd expect me to love my native language. And at the same time I kinda do, but I have mixed feelings about it because of so many things that have happened, and so many of my opinions that just don't go well with the language itself. And it just doesn't it feels weird to put it here, similarly to like German, and yet I still put it here because I enjoy it. I enjoy speaking it. I enjoy reading it, and despite the problems that I might have, it's still great in that sense that I can still enjoy it. And it's also very practical, and it's also the language that most likely is the reason that I can speak a lot of these other languages, and that I had this connection to all of these other languages, not just English, not just Serbian. I got to have a connection with many other ones because of it. Yeah, let's continue on with Malay and Indonesian. I'm gonna cheat with this one a bit, since actually I'll talk about it once I finish. Melayu dan Indonesia, kirana mereka agak boleh difahami, saya ingin menggabungkannya. Kedua-duanya adalah bahasa yang saya mempunyai pengalaman yang sangat kecil, tetapi saya masih mendapati menarik. Semoga kekurangan pengalaman tidak memberi kesan. Pemahaman Anda tentang apa yang saya katakan sebahagiannya menyebabkan mereka sangat mudah untuk saya baca, walaupun saya tidak pernah didedahkan kepada mereka, dan sebutan mereka masih agak unik dan berbeza daripada semua yang saya kuba. Saya tidak banyak menggunakannya dalam video saya, tetapi saya kuba menggunakannya apabila saya boleh. Nada umum, bahasa itu sangat menyenangkan, yang mungkin membuatkan saya sangat menyukainya. So with Malay, I put Malay and Indonesian together. I know they're different languages, but as far as I have been able to research, they're practically mutually intelligible, and often enough when I use them in some of my videos, they often sound or have a lot of common words and similar words in both, or like identical words. So I put them together, and I like them similarly to Polish because I had no exposure to them. And actually it's even more different from Polish. With Polish is at least a Slavic language, so I have some connection to it. But with connection, none whatsoever, because I just never had anything to or anyone talk Malay or Indonesian near me. It's literally half the world away. While other languages like Chinese, Korean, and Japanese were a lot more spoken than Malay and Indonesian, I got a lot more exposure, but I never actually heard Malay or Indonesian until I myself started speaking it. I mean, I did probably hear it, but I didn't know. And it's so distinct, yet so simple to read, and it's probably not as simple to pronounce. I probably butchered it and said half of these words wrong, but I still think that it has a really pleasant tone. And because of its relative simplicity compared to a lot of languages that are completely foreign to me, it still manages to interest me and fascinate me. And despite me not being any good at it probably, and I didn't even include it that often in my videos, I still like it and I still hope to use it more. And last but not least is English. And to many of you this might be cheating, but for me, since I am not a native English speaker, obviously not a native English speaker, it might be cheating for anyone that it is, but for me, despite being bilingual for a really long time, like since I was 4 years old, it felt completely different. It is still, I didn't find it to be like a foreign language like all of the other languages in this list, except Serbian, but it's still, how do I describe it? I've known it since I was very, very young, and my love for English was kind of frowned upon during my younger years, especially because a lot of other people didn't know and didn't like me talking in English or knowing it or doing stuff like that. So it only served to widen the divide between my love for English and for Serbian. And since I've preferred English for as long as I've remembered over Serbian, which is like a really weird thing to do when you're living in Serbia and you're a Serb, but you love English more. It's a really weird thing to do. It just caused quite a few problems in that sense, but it also, English was something that I loved. There were so many things to love about it, in my opinion, despite knowing the many problems that it had as a language, especially as one that's supposed to be universal, and so many people speak everywhere, and yet it's so complicated, at least to learn for someone. But since I learned it really early on, it was very natural for me. I never had to actually learn the grammar. Even now, when somebody asks me something about English, like, why is this like this, I'm like, how the hell should I know? Like, it comes naturally to me. It is because my brain says it is. So it's weird in that sense. And I loved how melodic it was, both regularly and in songs, how expressive one could be with its endless amount of synonyms and words that just felt like they could express all of my emotions and all of the things that I was thinking. And it allowed me to reach a world outside what most people around me knew, the world of the English language, which was just completely different from the regular world. And sorry about the dog if you can hear that. Never had a dog problem before, at least not here. And for me, English was always more than just a language, more than just a tool. It was in many ways an escape from everything that I did and everything in my regular life. And now that it's become an even larger part of my life, it's just an even bigger love for the language and for everything that it gave me. And it literally gave me I think if I had never learned English, I'm sure, I would be a completely different person, a completely different type of person with different interests, with a different personality and different everything about me. So with English, I have a much deeper connection to the language else here. Even though I said the Japanese is probably my favorite language, English will always be the language, my language. But yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. That's about it for this video. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed these, and if you listened to the entire video, thank you so much. I hope that you found it interesting and that you got something from it, and that I maybe inspired you to learn one of these languages or just explore something about it. And yeah, that's about it for me. Thank you once again. Leave a like. Let me know what you thought about your language or in general. It helps me out a lot when you guys comment and when I can interact with you guys. I really like interacting with a lot of you. And don't forget to subscribe. A lot of you aren't subscribed, and it would be really helpful for me if some of you subscribe, since a lot of you watch my videos and aren't subscribed. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.